cord. Okay. Whether it's, you know, a headache, whether we feel like we're not hungry. So many times when I experience anxiety, my hunger, my appetite goes out the window. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. In the second part, I talked a lot about how the effects of having anxiety in the body. And one of the things that happens is that when our body perceives a danger, it automatically turns on the sympathetic nervous system. And these are technical terms, you don't need to know them, but the sympathetic nervous system is what puts us in a state of either fighting back this threat, right? This tiger maybe that we see, are we going to fight it back? Or maybe we want to run, we want to flee from this danger and ignore it. Or sometimes we might even freeze, hoping that the tiger or the danger just doesn't see us. And so those are ways that our body tends to respond when we are in a situation where we perceive that there's danger. And so when this happens, our body naturally produces the hormone called cortisol, one of them. There's other ones like adrenaline. And this is, sorry, I see. Yes, please, you can share it. Because I know staff is also, adults, it's not just students, adults are also very much experiencing anxiety. And so when our body produces cortisol, there are a lot of side effects of cortisol when it's consistently producing it. And so I showed the image of a drip, like a faucet that's consistently dripping. And so if you imagine the water to be cortisol, when our body's flooded, like a, you know, cortisol cocktail in our body, it starts to have serious effects. And so long-term activation of the stress response system will end up leading us to disease, such as high blood pressure, maybe diabetes, you know, diagnoses such as anxiety, depression, ADHD. All of these things connect back to the health of our nervous system. And so that's what I talked a lot about in the second presentation. And in this presentation, I'm going to try to elaborate a little bit about the connection between our gut health. And by gut, I mean our stomach, our small and large intestine, the health of that area, which is often considered to be the second brain, and how that system connects a lot to our brain. And there's a superhighway communication system going on there, and what we can do about it. Because believe it or not, the health of our gut has a lot to do with anxiety and depression, among other things, but I'll stick to those two. So that's kind of the idea here. And I'm sure I probably already addressed some of these. So today, the gut connection to anxiety, that's kind of the idea today. And if you have any questions, feel free to please email me or put it in the chat. I'm going to put my email in the chat just in case you want to reach out. Or you can even unmute yourself and ask any questions at any time, because I know I do a lot of talking. A lot of it is informational, but I would also love to hear any questions you might have so that they get answered, right? So I kind of already went over this, but I talked about, oops, somebody else entered. I talked about the autonomic nervous system, and these are technical terms, nothing for you don't need to remember them, but the autonomic nervous system, if you think about it as being the automatic, right? This is something that happens automatically, where our nervous system is automatically ensuring that we're breathing, that, let me turn off my phone here. I know Ms. Strother understands this walkie-talkie. And so our nervous system plays a huge role in addressing anxiety. And so that's what I was talking about last time. It also, the other part of our nervous system is called the sympathetic nervous system. And like I explained, that's what turns on the fight and flight. In my metaphor, I was talking about the car, the gas pedal and the brake. So the gas pedal is like the sympathetic nervous system that allows us to gain all these energy and resources from our body to be able to fight off a perceived danger. And again, remember, it's the perceived danger in our environment that causes the anxiety to show up. And hi, welcome.
Hi, what is this? I got an email. I'm sorry.
No, thank you for asking. I appreciate that. This is a series for parents that I've been doing over the last couple of weeks that talks about anxiety and what it is, how we can support our students. And so this is the third part of that series. I will email all the parents, Hayward High School parents, with the links to the 4 presentations that I've given. So that's what today I'm doing part 3. So that's what you're, and you're welcome to stay. If you're busy, you're welcome to just wait for the email when I provide all the links. It's up to you. I appreciate you showing up.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I am recording, so just if you don't want, I don't know how to only record me. It records everybody, so just a heads up. Okay, so the parasympathetic system is what turns off that fight flight and brings us back into a state of ease, of resting, of actually digesting food. And I'm going to talk a lot about that today. And like I explained, when we're chronically stressed out, when we're chronically experiencing anxiety, the body is secreting cortisol, and that will lead in the long term to a lot of disease, right? And I explained that there are several things that we can do to activate this parasympathetic nervous system so that we can come back to our breath, right? Exercising, moving the body, singing and humming. It's going to make sense today why that actually is good. It has to do with the vagus nerve, which I'm going to talk about. Chanting activates the vagus nerve, hiking, being out in nature, all those things that I went over last week. Oops, somebody else came in. All right. So in this presentation, I will talk about a quick energy exercise that you can easily do. It's called belly button healing, and I'll talk about that at the end. But like I said, today's the connection between the health of our gut and how does that tie to anxiety? And I'll talk about the enteric nervous system, ENS. Again, these are just fancy terms, but it's this nervous system that's in our gut. And I'm going to talk about serotonin and dopamine, which are 2 hormones that play such a critical role in anxiety and depression. When we don't have enough of these hormones in our body, and I can tell you this from firsthand experience, anxiety and depression can more easily show up. And I'll talk about the vagus nerve and food. Okay, so really quick, I want you to remember, how did you feel when, I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios here. Do you remember when maybe you had to give a speech in front of a crowd, right? You were talking, maybe it was at a family member's wedding, or maybe it was at work, but you were giving a speech. Most of us probably had some butterflies in our stomach, right? There was some nervousness, some butterflies in the stomach, like, oh my goodness, maybe some sweating, right? Because it's something that we're not used to doing. What about that job interview? You know, you had a job interview. How are you feeling? Right? Maybe similar sensations, nervousness, anxiety, or shallow breath, or, worry, doubt. Or what about, remember the first time you went out on a date? What was your body feeling like? What were you sensing? Or another example, maybe you got a call. Maybe there was a call where you got some really bad news. And when you got that bad news, how did that show up in your body? I know for me, it felt like my heart just dropped, and like my stomach, somebody punched my stomach. So I share all these things with you because these are all examples of how our gut, our nervous system in our gut is working. It's sending messages to our brain to inform us of what's going on in our environment. So in this slide, I'm just going to talk about the enteric nervous system, a fancy word for saying the nervous system in our stomach. This is our stomach here, our large intestine, and our small intestine. And these little blue things, stars, are symbols for like the nervous system, all the nerves that are in that area that are communicating certain sensations, and it communicates it up through the gut-brain axis, which is the vagus nerve, up to the brain. And so, like I said, this includes the stomach, the large and small intestine, and it's considered to be the second brain. Some doctors, researchers even say it's really the first brain. And our brain is the second brain. And the reason they say this is because, believe it or not, let me go here. Oops, I'm going too far ahead. 90% of the communication that happens goes from here up to the brain. 90% of the communication of what's going on in our body is from the nervous system in our gut, and it goes up to the brain. Thank you, Ms. March. And so here's just a slide of what this nervous system in our gut looks like. This is just the lining of the intestine. And here you see all the nerves. And so just wanted to show that to you in case you're a visual learner. But like I explained here, how does it communicate? It communicates through this long nerve called the vagus nerve. And this vagus nerve is connected from the brain to the ear, the throat, our vocal cords, all the way down to our major organs. And I'll show you another picture of that. And it's called the brain gut axis. That's what it's referred to as. And so let me move forward a little bit. And like I said, 90%, it's estimated that 90% of our communication is from the gut to the brain. So let's stop and pause here and think about, God, if that's 90% of our communication going up to the brain to send messages, right? What does that mean if we don't have a healthy gut system? It probably means that our messages going up to our brain may not be the most healthiest, right? Or it's sending messages to the brain to then the brain send messages to the body to produce hormones that perhaps we may not need, or hormones that we need and it's not producing enough of. And so that is why it's important. And the two hormones that I'll briefly talk about is serotonin and dopamine. And I think if you stick with me here, you'll have a better understanding of why perhaps our students and even ourselves might not have the motivation. May feel so hard to get up in the morning and get out of bed. It may be so hard to finish a task, to complete the assignments, the homework. We give up before, we even try. A lot of this connects back to our serotonin and dopamine hormones in our body. And I'll share with you firsthand my experience in doing this. So serotonin, what is it? Serotonin is what's responsible for giving us the feeling of just being well overall, being healthy, having a feeling of just of wholeness, of worthiness, right? And this is a hormone that allows us to just be calm, be grounded, be centered. And 90% of this hormone is produced in the gut, not in the brain, in the gut. Only 3% of it is in the brain. Dopamine is the feeling, it gives us the feeling of happiness, but I want you to think about it this way. It's always, every time I hear to a lecture, it's presented using technology. You want to know why our kids, and including me, adults, why we're so addicted to Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever else is on there? Because every time we get a like or that little heart or, the Facebook like thumb, it sends like a hit of dopamine because we feel like there's a reward, or like we were seen or we were heard. It's like, oh, how many likes do I have? And it feels so good because every time that happens, we're getting a hit of dopamine in our body. And that's why it can become so addicting. And so 50% of this hormone is produced in the gut, not as much as serotonin, the dopamine, 50% of it. And now, why is this important? Well, serotonin affects our mood, how we feel. Are we, grouchy? Are we happy? Are we, our mood might change. It might go up and down. I might wake up happy. By the time I get home, I might be in a completely different mood. It affects our appetite. It affects our sleep. It affects our sexual functioning, our desire. I won't say much more about that, but it affects that. Our memory and our learning. So for our students, if there's not enough serotonin that's being produced in the gut, 90% of it is produced there, it affects their memory and their learning and social behavior with their classmates, with their teachers, behavior amongst big groups, small groups. There's a lot of social anxiety. And so when we have a deficiency in serotonin, these are some of the effects here. We might have low self-esteem, We might become very sensitive to our environment. We might have anxiety. We might have some panic attacks, mood swings. I used to feel very irritable very easily. When I'd get home from work, oh my God, my irritability meter was off the chain. Like, just give me my space. It was very difficult to be present for my family. There's a lot of feeling of hopelessness. And I know our students, the ones that I see in my office a lot, are always communicating how they feel hopeless. Like, why even come to school? I'm not even going to do well in my grades. And if I don't do well in my grades, my parents are going to be upset. I'm going to disappoint them. So let me just not get out of bed. It's like this feeling of just overwhelming, like I can't do anything to change my situation. And then there's a lot of students who are just having a fear of just being amongst classmates, being in a classroom. I have kids that just cannot go to class. They're here every day, but going to class is just, it's too overwhelming for them. There can also be obsession or compulsion, like maybe, obsession or compulsion biting nails with younger kids, or, an obsession about, I see this more with like people that will hold on to a lot of stuff. So hoarders, or obsessively cleaning all the time. That could be a part of deficiency in serotonin. Insomnia, not being able to sleep, depression, which ties into the feeling hopeless, and sugar cravings. Craving a lot of sugar can be an effect of serotonin, not having enough of it. With dopamine, there's a lot of cross similarity here. So you'll notice that serotonin and dopamine kind of have some of the same effects and deficiencies. So dopamine affects motivation. And so many of our students and adults, staff, right? They just feel unmotivated. And then we want to think about, rewards and, how do I get my child to get motivated? All of those are really not addressing the root, which is maybe not having sufficient dopamine in the body. And so anything else we do without addressing it is really may not address the motivation, issue that a lot of our students are having right now. It also affects concentration. A lot of students having a hard time concentrating for 30 minutes, much less an hour. It affects movement and coordination, learning, feeling pleasure, exhilaration, bliss, really just having an overall sense of just life is amazing, right? This overall sense of joy and happiness. And so when we're deficient in dopamine, we procrastinate, we have low self-esteem, lack of motivation, low energy, or a lot of fatigue, especially in the evenings throughout the end of the day when we've used so much energy, we just kind of crash in the afternoon or in the evening. That might be a sign of low dopamine. Inability to focus, anxiety, depression, hopeless, right? Bored with life, having mood swings, right? All of these, just a quick summary. So how do we increase? I'm assuming you're probably thinking, okay, Ms. Velo, thanks for letting me know this, but how do I improve the levels of serotonin and dopamine? What you'll see here is that a lot of these things I've already spoken about in the second presentation. Exercise, both of them. Taking cold showers. And again, let me stress here that I'm not saying for you to take a cold, your entire shower cold. A lot of what I understand is take your normal shower, and then the last 30 seconds, minute, 2 minutes, whatever you can do, put it on cold. And so it allows your body to become more used to, that's the bell, to become more used to sensations that perhaps we sometimes want to run away from, right? Because we're not used to feeling discomfort and our emotions because we've attached labels that I can't cry or I can't be angry because that's not good. But taking a cold shower allows us to be able to sit in that uncomfortability, and we become more used to being able to feel the emotion of anger and it not being so, oh, I got to shut that down, because that's what a lot of us were trained as children, not to express those emotions. So I find I do cold showers, and I find that that's been very helpful for me to not run away from difficult situations. Sunlight is so good, gives us vitamin D3, which a lot of us are deficient in. Massages and hugs, I've read that giving a 20-second hug does wonders for us. So massages and hugs. Now here's where it gets a little bit different. Well, sleep is in both of them. So sleeping, making sure you sleep your 8 hours. And I just keep getting amazed when I speak to students about sleep, and they're telling me they're going to bed at 2 a.m, 3 a.m, watching, video games, or, like sleep is so important. It's a way, the cold shower is interesting. Yeah, it is. But with sleep, think of sleep as like an opportunity, not only for the body, but for the brain, for our gut system to kind of reset itself. And so when we don't get enough sleep, we wake up kind of with, if you think about all these, what would be a good metaphor here? You know how they explain like women operate with like a million windows open, like in the computer, we might have all these tabs open, we're good at multitasking. Well, when you don't get enough sleep, it's like all these windows never close. They're still there. It didn't get to like clean out the system. And so we keep waking up, oversleeping. Good question. When we oversleep could be a sign of depression because we don't have enough energy. And when we're oversleeping, our body is trying to build some energy so that we can get up and do our normal day-to-day functions. I was a person that used to sleep at least 10 hours a day. My sleep's getting better now with all the changes that I've been making in my life personally, but I had to be in bed by 8 o'clock, 8:30, and I would sleep the full all the way till 6 a.m. And sometimes I'd wake up and I would still feel really tired and sleepy. And I learned that a lot of that was my body trying to conserve what little energy I had due to depression. And so I needed to sleep a lot. And that can be a sign of depression or just not having certain vitamins or minerals. I'm very depleted. So oversleeping is usually connected to that, not always though. And then here, having a pet. Oh my goodness, having a pet. I don't know how many of you have pets. I don't have a pet, but my colleague here, Mr. Miller, one of the assistant principals, has a small little poodle that he had planned a quick getaway over the weekend, and he found out that the place he was going to didn't accept pets. So last minute he asked me if I can, dog sit or babysit or whatever you want to call it. And my husband's from Nigeria, so he's not a big pet person. In fact, in Nigeria, if you have a pet, it's more like for protection. And so he was not very keen about having a dog over the weekend, but nonetheless, I was able to, convince him. And I kid you not, that weekend was one of the most memorable weekends. We had so much fun. We were laughing. We went out on walks every day. The kids were just in such a different energetic state of just joy. And maybe it was because it was just, something, we don't have a pet, and maybe it would go away over time, but having a pet just kind of brightened the environment. And there's a lot of studies that show that pets are very good at helping people with depression and anxiety. It co-regulates the nervous system. And what I mean by regulate it helps a person kind of stay more calm. It's kind of like helping the person come out of anxiety and overwhelm, and it's very calming presence. So having a pet apparently increases serotonin levels. And music, listening to music, dancing, right? Over here with dopamine, there was a couple of different things here that were not on the serotonin list. Creating a to-do list and like being able to check off your to-do list, it's like a sense of reward that gives you hits of dopamine, just like, Facebook and Instagram. It's the same idea. And then just expressing gratitude. So these are just a list of things. But if you remember this slide from last week, all of the things that activate the parasympathetic system, which is the brake, remember, to get us to slowly come back to calm and get out of the fight and flight where we're trying to take action to something. These also will increase dopamine and serotonin. So this all kind of beautifully, like nature just has a way of tying all these things together. So all of these things will activate the parasympathetic system and also increase dopamine and serotonin. So the breathing, the exposure to cold, the exercise, the singing, dancing, right? And here was just a quick review of last week, right? The sympathetic, right, is the gas pedal, where we get energy because we have to fight off this perceived danger, right? And the alarm of anxiety goes on, and so we have to do something to protect ourselves. That's when the sympathetic system gets turned on. Sympathetic, I remember sympathetic stress starts with the gas pedal. The parasympathetic, the brake, slow us down, bring us back. The parasympathetic can also, if it's turned on all the time, can also lead to depression. So it gets a little bit more complicated, but I was trying just to simplify things here. But activating our parasympathetic is what allows us to come out of a state of stress and overwhelm into more of a state of ease, calm, and groundedness. And all those things that we've been talking about, the breathing, all of that will activate it. Now here, in this one, what's important here to stress is that a lot of what turns on these systems in our body, the nervous system, has a lot to do with emotions. So the foot here is what's responsible for either pressing down the gas pedal or the brake, right? It's usually our emotions. And what are emotions? If you literally go back here, emotions is energy in motion. That's really all that emotions are. It's a form of energy, and they're just in motion. And here's a list of emotions. These are elevated emotions, meaning it doesn't mean that they're good, that they're better. That's what we label them as, but it just means that they're emotions that vibrate at a higher level. They don't have a lot of weight feeling to them. And these are emotions that will allow us to really thrive. So these are love, gratitude, inspiration, joy, and feeling excited. Actually, feeling excited can also trigger anxiety. It can trigger anxiety. So just wanted to make a note of that. Being in awe, having it's, if you ever observe kids, when they're like 3, 4 years old, or even 2, they're always asking why. They are just literally being true to themselves, and they're really just so curious about the world. We haven't labeled the bird. It's, what's that thing that's flying and it's blue, right? They're so much more aware of color and describing without putting the label, it's a bird. When we label it the bird, it's like the curiosity just goes away. So these are all emotions, and there's more. This is just a limited list that really allows us to feel like they're light. We feel them light in our body. There's not a whole lot of heaviness to them. Over here on this side is what we can term as survival emotions. These are emotions, energy and motion that tends to be lower in vibration, that can feel heavier. The lowest emotion is shame, and it's at a scale of 20. I think 700 is the highest, and enlightenment is the emotion that's highest, 700. Shame is the lowest, 20. And here, agitation, worry, fear, anxiety, all these emotions tend to feel a lot more, they feel heavier. And so what happens is when we don't process these emotions, like anger, right, or frustration, for various reasons, how we were raised, our conditioning. And I'm not here to blame parents. I'm just bringing awareness. When we don't process these, this is what tends to lead to dis-ease. And I separate it because the word disease is really meaning, it's bringing our attention that somewhere in our body, we don't have balance anymore. There's a lack of ease, feeling like, oh, I'm so at ease. I'm so calm, or so just grounded, right? Well, if you look at the word dis-ease, it just means that you're no longer balanced. You're out of balance. You're out of ease. And that has a lot to do with our nervous system, because our nervous system is what pulls us into a state of survival, a state where we feel like we're in danger, i.e. anxiety, right? Or our nervous system can also pull us into a state of ease, into a state of relaxation, right? The parasympathetic nervous system. So over here is where, you know, we have health. Now, I don't want you to leave thinking, oh, survival emotions are horrible. I'm not saying that. It's very natural to experience anger. It's very natural to have fear. We all have fear. We need to have fear. Imagine if children didn't have fear and they went up and touched all these, you know, like we need fear to survive. It is very important. What I am saying is that when we experience these emotions, survival emotions, but we don't allow them to be processed and they get stuck energy in the body. Remember when we were talking about this metaphor? When the body continues to get filled up with emotions that weren't processed. And we can also, I can say this, it was hard for me to express joy in my house. So it's not just the survival emotions. It can also be difficult to express elevated emotions such as love or joy. I could never, it's even weird for me even now as an adult to express joy, because I never saw my mom express joy. So I felt like if I did, I would be betraying her because it would feel uncomfortable for her. So it goes both ways, right? All I'm saying is that when we don't express these emotions, they get stuck in the body. And when we perceive, when we're in when we're experiencing something that reminds us of the original experience where this emotion got stuck, that's where anxiety shows up. It's the alarm, like, oh, you have some stored energy here that was not expressed. This is an opportunity for you to express that anger, to express that grief, to express that joy that you didn't feel safe to do so. And that's the beauty of anxiety, is that it's really giving us an opportunity to remember what we were not, as maybe as children, where we were not allowed to express because we didn't feel comfortable or safe to do so. And that is really what I've come to learn about anxiety. So let me move forward here. And this is the vagus nerve that I was talking about earlier. And I'll end on this piece because the vagus nerve is in yellow, and it's literally connected to all of the organs. This is the superhighway communication system in our body, and it's connected to the ear. That's why if you guys, I don't know, when I do clean my ears with the Q-tip, oh my God, it feels so amazing. I don't know if you guys have the same feeling. It just feels good. When I clean my ears, it's like, oh, it's because you're actually activating the vagus nerve. And when we activate the vagus nerve, it turns on the parasympathetic system, the brake, which gives us a feeling of calmness. So doing that is another way to come out of overwhelm and stress. And as you can see here, it connects to our vocal cords. This is why I was saying, by you singing, humming, it allows for us to calm. And you can see here, it connects to the lungs, to the heart, the stomach, right? Our spleen, the liver. I mean, it connects to every single organ in the body. Well, not everyone. We're missing the kidneys and all that, but it connects to the majority. And so again, when we talk about the health of our gut system, if our gut system is not healthy, I would assume you imagine what messages are being sent up to the brain, right? And so that plays such an important role. So like I said here, it's the superhighway of information between the gut and the brain. 90% of communication, about that 85-90% is from the gut to the brain. And so what do we do here, right? What do we do to improve our gut system? This is something that you all know, nothing new here. It has a lot to do with what we eat. And I'm sharing this because I personally went through a detox, eating detox in February of the beginning of this calendar year. And during this detox, it was, I think, 6 weeks long, but I think we extended it to 8 weeks. I ate what's on here. I try to eat as much organic and non-genetically modified organisms. What that means is that, for example, corn, a lot of corn that we buy now has been modified genetically. So it's when we eat it, when we consume it, our gut doesn't even recognize that it's corn anymore because it's been modified, and it creates a lot of issues. Sometimes the gut will get what's called a leaky gut syndrome, where literally our gut starts to get holes and food particles might start to get out of the wall of the intestine, and it starts to create inflammation because in comes our immune system and starts to attack these food particles because they're seen as foreign, foreign items in our body. And so we have when we get leaky gut syndrome, this is where we get brain fog, and it starts to go into all these other diseases because our gut health is not healthy. And so if you can eat organic and non-GMO, that goes a long way. I know it's a lot more expensive, and I know that there's equitable issues around financially purchasing this kind of food. But what I ate for 8 weeks was nuts, specifically walnuts, Brazilian nuts. I'm going to show you some pictures of the milk that I would make. I no longer drink cow milk. There's just a lot of research showing that cow milk has a lot of hormones from the cow, and causes a lot of inflammation in the body. So you can make your own Brazilian milk, almond milk, fruits. Blueberries is considered to be one of the top 10 health foods. Blueberries, wild blueberries is very healthy. Melons, papaya, watermelon, all fruits that have seeds in them are really, really healthy. It allows the digestive system to be cleaned. And then avocado. Avocado's one of those top 10 superfoods. It has healthy oils for your brain. So avocado, oh my God, without avocado, I don't think I could have survived this diet because it gives some flavor. Cucumber, cherry tomatoes, veggies. We all know, we all talk, always hear veggies is helpful. Veggies is important. But the top veggies is Brussels sprouts, the broccoli, spinach, asparagus, nopales. I don't know, my parents are Mexican, and, nopales is something that was always readily available. And then Mexican squash, or just green squash in general. Any of that is very healthy. Herbal teas that don't have caffeine. If you experience a lot of anxiety, caffeine is really bad for you, especially like coffee in the morning, because it jumpstarts your sympathetic nervous system. It gets, it affects you. So if you ever try to stop drinking caffeine, you'll even notice that your body is a little bit jittery. It's like having withdrawals from the caffeine. But just a note there. So herbal teas like elderberry, fennel, red clover, ginger, chamomile, those are all really good too to detox the gut. And then grains. The worst kind of thing that you can eat is white bread or white rice. It spikes up your sugar levels like crazy. And so instead of eating white rice, I've now become used to eating quinoa or amaranth grain, wild rice, which is brown rice, red rice, and then water. Oh my God, I can go a day without drinking water, and it will now allow the energy systems and just your systems to just operate at an optimal level, because we need water. Our body is 85% water. So we need to drink lots of water. And speaking for myself, I don't do it enough. So these are also recommended supplements that you can take for your health system. A multivitamin, omega-3s, which is a fish oil. There's been studies, and I can attest to this because I give my kids omega-3, that shows kids who are having a lot of behavioral problems, who can't focus, who can't concentrate. If you put them on a dose of omega-3, either 1 milligram or the max 3 milligrams. And again, I'm not a doctor, so, please, talk to a professional, but I've given my kids omega-3, and I use the Nordic brand. It's a little expensive. And it allows remember how we were talking about the 3 parts of the brain, the mammalian brain, which has the hippocampus, which is responsible for memory. And the amygdala, which is like the alarm for the anxiety, it shrinks the amygdala so that alarm doesn't easily go off as much. And the hippocampus, it allows it to get bigger, to grow, because the hippocampus is responsible for memory and long-term memory, short-term memory. So omega-3 is amazing. I've even read an author who talked about getting into an accident where she had a brain injury and she was aware of omega-3 and she healed herself by taking these supplements on her own. So it's a very, very powerful. Vitamin D3 is what we get from the sun, but we're all very deficient in it. We're working in offices all day. I have no sunlight in here. So vitamin D3 is very important. Vitamin B12 is important for the health of the nervous system. Very, very good for, my mom always says, ay, soy muy nerviosa. I'm very nervous. I give her vitamin B12 to kind of help with the nervous system. Sulforaphane is just a fancy word for all the things that the green leafy vegetables like broccoli, spinach, Brussels sprouts gives you. So if you don't eat a lot of those veggies, you can take sulforaphane, and that is a supplement. L-tryptophan, I'm forgetting what that is. So I'm sorry, I don't remember. I know it's healthy, but I'm not remembering. I don't take that much. That's probably why I don't remember. And the other one is coconut oil. I don't know if you guys, what kind of oil you cook with. I would highly recommend you don't use vegetable oil. It has a lot of processed oils in there that are not good for you and creates a lot of inflammation in the gut. But if you can cook with coconut oil or grapeseed oil, I think Costco has them. They're not as expensive as, olive oil or coconut oil, but that is really healthy. And then they have this coconut oil that's called MCT, and I take 2 spoons in the morning before I have my herbal tea, and it does wonders for the brain too. And then just getting a lot of fiber to move the digestion to make it smoother. So eating a lot of fiber in the form of fruit, or again, a supplement is something like psyllium husks that you can put in water and just take. And I did that during the detox. I took psyllium husks 3 times a day with water. Yes, B12 is the happy pill. Yes, and olive oil is good too. Yes, it is. Although I hear olive oil, you can't cook it on high levels of heat because then it becomes bad. So just, be careful with that. So thank you for sharing that. So here's what I ate during my detox. Avocado, cherry tomatoes, spinach. This is a basil sauce that I would create with walnuts, garlic, extra virgin olive oil. And then this is red cabbage. I used agave syrup, which is kind of like honey, but it's apparently a better alternative for your health system, digestive system, with some pepper, salt. So this typically would be a dinner for me. I want to say this is quinoa with cucumber, tomatoes, avocado, lemon, some dill, some herbs in there, red onion, very delicious. My kids will eat the red cabbage because it's kind of sweet. They can eat this. They will eat that. Just, it depends on the flavor. Here is the basil sauce that I make. This is basil leaves, walnuts, salt, garlic, olive oil, and then I just mix it, black pepper, and this is what I would use. Instead of using pasta, which pasta as a grain creates a lot of leaky gut syndrome, I would use squash and just would make that into pasta as a substitute. And I just put it on some grapeseed oil, some salt, some pepper, let it simmer. And then I would use that with some cherry tomatoes and my basil sauce. My kids love this. And my daughter always wants to eat this. So very easy to make. This is where you can make your own milk. Dairy is considered to be very unhealthy for us. So you can make coconut milk, just scrape off the coconut meat and add some, water. You can make the consistency is up to you. And then this is, I believe, Brazilian nut milk. So I let Brazilian nuts soak for, overnight, and in the morning, blend them with some water, and the consistency is up to you. You can add a little bit of vanilla or agave syrup to give it a little bit more of a sweeter flavor. And this is so delicious. My kids love this. When I have time, I make it. I haven't had time now that I'm back at work. And then, I just put in a nut seed bag, and you just kind of pour out the milk. Very easy to do. And then, so this coconut milk that I was sharing over here, I use it to make this dish with garbanzo beans, which are super, super healthy. And you can see here, it's the cherry tomatoes, a lot of herbs like dill and oregano. I don't know if that's how you say it in English, oregano, onions. And then this, you can make garbanzo beans hummus, cayenne pepper. I forget what this is, but I made my own hummus. It was very intensive. This is not easy when you're working. This is why I'm not completely eating like this anymore all the time, but I'm just sharing some recipes to, heal the gut system, which would heal the anxiety, the depression, because again, of what I just went over. And finally, to end it all, in case you are so busy like me and can't always cook this way, right? There is an energy exercise, an exercise that allows us to stimulate our gut system to process food and to produce serotonin and dopamine. And it's a wand. You can buy it on Amazon, but you can use your fingers. All you have to do is you locate your belly button and you literally just press on it. And you can do this for like a minute, 3 minutes, and just press on your belly button. And that literally, as you will see here on the presentation, it does all these things. It will stimulate the gut brain. It will make your immune system, it makes it work better. It will reduce body tension. Sometimes when I do this exercise, I will notice that I have a lot of tension in my shoulders because that's where I hold a lot of emotions throughout the day that I don't process at work. And so I do this, I feel that tension, and then I just try to move my shoulders and allow some of that to be released. So it'll reduce tension in your gut area too. I don't know, for those of us that have a lot of worry, sometimes we feel that in our stomach or we feel it in our gut. It'll allow all that tension, that energy, that emotion that's stuck there to be released. It also will stimulate the vagus nerve, the parasympathetic nervous system, right? Because our vagus nerve goes all the way down to our gut. So as we do that, this is also allowing us to go back to a state of ease. So this is a very powerful exercise, and believe it or not, it produces the dopamine and the serotonin. So this is one exercise, does a lot of things just by stimulating our gut with our fingers. So I wanted to share that, and I've done this before. This is my way of trying to just heal myself, is being aware, always connecting to our body. And I do it through what I call energy exercises, which is, tapping, shaking the body, right? All the things that I've gone over, that's what I call energy exercises, belly button healing. And these are all things that I've gone over, right? How we can de-stress. You're already learning about the nervous system. Hopefully you can have conversations with your child about, the stress or, whatever's appropriate depending on their age. And I always say, if we want to support our kids, I know this presentation is called How to Support Your Kid, Experiencing Anxiety. My answer, and it's very unpopular, is to start working on your own healing. Because when we are coming from a parenting from a place of much more wholeness, we don't get easily triggered. We don't easily react to our children. We can actually respond because we've worked on ourselves, right? If we're like my mom, and I had a lot of anger towards it, but my mom was doing her best, but she was in survival mode a lot. She was an immigrant to this country. She didn't speak English. My dad was a farm worker, and she had 4 children, on welfare, food stamps. And she could not parent from a place of calmness, because her mind was constantly going, and she had anxiety, she's depression, diabetes. There's a long list. So there's no way that I could, as a child, expect my mom to show up present for me, because she was just trying to survive on a day-to-day basis. So when we work on ourselves and heal ourselves as parents, I guarantee that you'll support your children in many ways that just you wouldn't even imagine. And so taking care of ourselves, right? The sleep, all that. And when we model it, our kids will learn that. One of the things for me as a mother is I didn't want my daughter to grow up not taking care of herself. That's what was modeled to me. So I was doing it unconsciously. I wasn't aware of it. until I was like, wait, I don't want my daughter to grow up doing this. So I had to start changing and modeling something different for her. Exercising, diet, we talked about diet today, right? Try to reduce sugar intake and all the stuff we talked about today, and the role on the health of the gut system and how it communicates to the brain. And then more importantly, more than anything, it's just making all emotions normal. Validating all of our kids' emotions, validating our own emotions when we feel angry, when we feel frustrated, not labeling that as I'm a bad parent, or feeling shame for feeling anger, or crying, right? And really allowing ourselves to process all those emotions. So these are kind of the big steps for me, that I remind myself to consistently come back to. So that's it. I don't know if there are any questions, any comments. I hope this was helpful. I know it was a lot of talking. Sometimes I can't gauge the audience because you're behind a screen, but this was part 3, and I hope that you're able to use the information and do something with it, because I've come to learn that just getting knowledge is not good enough. We have to do something with it, because we can read a million books, and I've read the books, but until I implement the knowledge is just knowledge. So thank you so much, Ms. Cardenas. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad it's been helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Very useful information. Thank you. I'm glad it's been helpful. If there's any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or to unmute yourself.
Jesse Dunning, please come to the attendance. Jesse Dunning to the attendance.
I'm going to stop the recording.